We are live. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 138 of the Security Podcast on the M30 Network. There's a lot of really huge news stories. I mean, it's been a slow week. We have some stuff on the list that we haven't talked about, so we're going to get to. But if you have to say anything this week that's really important is Brian Krebs did some super sleuthing and lots of writing. Lots of writing. Long articles, long. And he thinks he found the Mirai botnet author. So
this is interesting. I haven't had a chance to go through the whole article other than just glancing at it a little bit here. But Krebs does some decent research, as he's known for. There's only a couple little issues that I have. Things that as a Go programmer, I don't believe Golang is an esoteric programming language just now gaining in popularity. But that's beside the point. Definitely check out the story. It's very interesting. It looks like, what do you want to say, 2-3 years ago, we actually talked to a journalist who was investigating the DDoS attack against Rutgers University. Krebs believes that this is the same person.
So we had on Charlie Cradaville from New Brunswick today, I don't know, a year and a half ago, right when this was coming out. Rutgers was getting DDoSed right as the semester ended, probably exactly this time last year, right as the semester ended or the new one is supposed to start. And Charlie from New Brunswick today, who it likes to muckrake, for a lack of a better word, was saying Rutgers doesn't have enough infrastructure, not this. But what really was going on is that this guy was using his efforts he was practicing. I mean, that's really what it was. To take down Rutgers is a pretty big deal, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it is a university. It has bandwidth, but it's not made of money. And basically, people were paying him, and we all know how that goes. You get paid, you say, okay, you oblige, you do it, you can collect, and you want to make it better. Turns out all of this was, and this is not spoiling it, was for Minecraft. It's all about the Minecraft mods. So,
to be fair, and we do have to list all sides of the story that we know about, there was an update posted yesterday where Joe responded to Brian asking for more details, and he said that he did not write Mirai and was not involved in attacking Rutgers. So just to put that out there, the devil's always in the details, so we don't know what's really the true story, but Krebs does his homework. So definitely check this out. It's pretty interesting, but I don't think we have solid, complete proof yet, although an FBI investigation is ongoing.
I'm sure the FBI was right there knocking on the door. I don't know, this broke Wednesday, Thursday morning. Anyway, maybe he's the real Satoshi.
Yes, he's definitely. Well, we already establish on the podcast a couple years back that I'm the real Satoshi Nakamoto.
So we're knocking on Satoshi's door. So, I mean, look, it's a really, really long article. It's really interesting. It goes to show how far Brian Krebs will go to make sure that he is as accurate and as precise as possible. So it's, I mean, chat logs and everything else. So you can make up your own mind. And Brian Krebs always does some amazing research. So if he's saying it, like you said, unless he's missing something completely, something huge, I don't think he's wrong. So we'll go with that. Let's see. The next story that we have, so we talked about that, this is from a few months ago. So 200 filmmakers asked Nikon and Canon to sell encrypted cameras. And I never thought about this. So I'm going to ask Tom. Tom, do you own a real camera?
I don't.
Okay.
Well, unless real camera is defined as like a digital camera module that you can hook to your Pi. So I've got one of those.
So I own a really nice digital camera. I'm holding it up here. It's a Sony. I'm looking at your picture. I have a Sony A7. So yes, it's a little old, full frame camera. This ran me about $2,000. It's a real camera. Okay, I have gotten some money using it for professional reasons. Anyway, I never thought about encrypting it. Then all of a sudden it hit me. Why aren't we encrypting it? So so really it's journalists, and I'm not a journalist, are going around and they're being harassed by the police. The police are taking their memory cards, and they would like to have that information. And if they found something that they shouldn't be having, they would want to encrypt it. So I initially threw away the article, said, why is this a thing? And then I realized between the camera and your computer and your hotel room, the police can stop you, confiscate your SD card, and now you may incriminate yourself.
So I take back my previous statement. I do have a physical camera, and I apologize to all of our audio listeners. I have right here a Game Boy camera, and this is possibly the best digital camera known to man. It can hold about 20 160 by 160 pixel images, black and white only, 4 shades of gray, and it is by far one of the best digital cameras I've ever used. You can even turn the camera around to face you and take selfies. How cool is that?
The original selfie. And if you're not watching, Tom has, I think, every Nintendo game over his right shoulder.
I collect. So if you have any Super Nintendo games, let me know. I'm very interested.
So anyway, but I didn't think of this, and I'm thinking now, is that hard to do? I don't know what the camera software is. I mean, I have an idea of how it works. It takes the picture. What the camera does, which is amazing, it takes the raw image. It then automatically compresses it to JPEG. And for most people, that compression to JPEG is what you get and is perfectly acceptable. Because I have a really expensive camera, take the raws because I'm an elitist. Like I only listen to vinyl records elitist. And I then say, I want my own, I can tweak the JPEG settings, and I never get it as good as the camera. So the camera is just as good. And then what it would do is have to encrypt it. So it would have to encrypt like a 30 megabyte file, 25 for the raw and 5 for that. And then your computer would have to have a way to decrypt it. And I don't know how possible that is.
Well, you could actually do it a slightly simpler way. You could have a lot of these cameras are now coming out with touchscreens built in. So you could have a passphrase entry or a PIN entry when you boot up the camera. So you can encrypt the entire file system of the SD card. So no matter what you throw in there, it's automatically encrypted because the whole card's encrypted. Now, the only downside to that, and really it's a pretty big downside, is if someone grabs your camera while it's turned on, they can view your pictures. Now, there are ways to do encryption without having that issue. You can use public key cryptography, where the private key is stored on your computer, on your computer software that came with the camera, and your camera just encrypts to the public key, and you don't have the private key for it. So even if they do have your pictures, they can't decrypt them. The only downside is you can't see them. So if you want to go back or make sure you got a shot, you're kind of out of luck. So there's a couple different ways to do this, but I don't know if this really accomplishes a whole bunch besides avoiding getting in trouble or avoiding giving evidence to law enforcement. So the cops can still take your camera. They can trash the SD card. They can take it with them. They can confiscate it as evidence. They can do a whole lot to make sure that those incriminating pictures you took never see the light of day. So really you need a combination. You need both something that encrypts and protects your privacy and protects you from leaking evidence to law enforcement if you're arrested, and you need the camera or the SD card itself, because these do exist, automatically upload your pictures to some sort of cloud account. It can be private, it can be public, it can be something you set up at home, but it has to get the pictures off of the camera as fast as possible, as soon as possible after you take them. So even if law enforcement grabs your camera, you still have the photos backed up somewhere safe that they can't get to.
I mean, I was almost on that same impression. I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm taking these photos. If somebody's stopping me, I think what's on the SD card is the least of my worries, because now they have me and they have my camera and they have all of this. And I'm sure there's forensics to go back with some cache of where you were and everything else, especially with GPS on the camera. But just to encrypt it, it would have to be all the time. It would have to be every photo. And my initial thinking was, okay, now that you have the encrypted file, how do you decrypt it? So you have to put it on your computer. And Nikon and Canon and Sony will not use a proprietary encryption algorithm. They're going to bundle into their Play Memories type of, or Print Shop Pro, whatever type of app that now you're going to have to use to decrypt it. So they're going to do this, and now you're going to have to install this thing. And if you're on Linux, I mean, forget it. If you're on anything else, forget it. You're going to have to use their software, their buggy software, to decrypt it. And then you're going to have to do 4 or 5 different steps rather than them doing it right. So I almost feel like whatever you're doing is probably better than what they're going to do.
Yeah, there is always that risk. What I would like to see, and what some companies have actually done, not in the camera space, but in other spaces, when they implement encryption, it's really just a branded wrapper around, GPG or PGP, something open that everyone can use, or a branded version of TrueCrypt that they throw out there. All of these things work great, and it gives you the option of, both maintaining the open sourceness of whatever encryption you're using. So in case that software just doesn't run, you always have a backup. You can always use something else to get your data back. But it has the added benefit of, for those of us who don't use TrueCrypt or GPG on a regular basis, we just pop the disk in our computers and everything magically works. But if you're thinking, it's my camera, I take pictures of my kids, I maybe go to a sporting event and I take the camera with me, I shoot pictures of birthday parties, and why on earth do I need an encrypted camera? It's not for you. One of the people who's been heavily asking for this is Laura Poitras, also known as the videographer who shot the original footage of Edward Snowden in Hong Kong. Right? She's not taking pictures of birthday parties. I'm sure she is, but the stuff she wants encrypted, the stuff she needs this for, is literal state secret levels of, oh my God, this can't get out. If some thief takes my camera, I cannot risk this data getting into the hands of anyone else except the people I'm presenting it to eventually. So, it's not for you. It's not for your kids' birthday parties. It's not to shoot pretty pictures of clouds. This is for legit, Pentagon Papers level of journalistic enterprises.
Again, and if you think this is for you, remember, you can always use your phone, an iPhone, Android phone. Those cameras are good enough, and they're encrypted by default. I mean, you can turn on encryption by default, and it's already there working for you.
Yeah, especially, an iPhone without an iCloud backup, you couldn't really ask for anything better. A, it's a great camera. B, it's safe by default. C, it's not backing up your photos anywhere if you turn that stuff off. So you've already got the best encrypted camera you can ask for in your pocket already. For Android, it varies on manufacturer, OS level, and a host of other options. So I'll leave that alone for now.
So, yes, we're not going to argue which is the best Android phone. But anyway, so again, I saw that. We didn't really talk about it. It's from months ago, but I figured we'd bring it up. The last thing, but the next thing I want to talk about is somebody on my Facebook parents group said, use this website, teensafe.com. You can go there. It's not a big deal. It's a website. It's for an app that you install on your teenager's phone and allows you to completely spy on them. And it has a really spiffy website until you start clicking and the site breaks. But what it basically does is you have to install an app. You're telling your teenager, I'm installing this app. I'm going to be able to see everything you do, but only for certain apps. Like, for example, they can't monitor Snapchat and they can't monitor Signal. So what does that mean? That means that your teens are smarter than you think. And guess where they are anyway? Snapchat. And they'll get the Signal. If you're going to read their WhatsApp things, they're going to move over. So I just saw this and I said, first, we lost a lot of trust, but two, people are just throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, they sell this for $15 a month. You sell 100 subscriptions, you're going to be making at least a little money for a couple hours worth of work.
I always hate these things. I hate reviewing these things, and I really hate talking about this because it's a hard problem, and it's not a hard problem from the teens' point of view. I mean, it sucks, but it's a hard thing for me to tell parents, just stop spying on them. A little bit of trust goes a whole long way. If you let your teenagers be teenagers, if you trust them even a little bit, they might surprise you. They might act responsibly, and if they don't, they're teenagers. You have to expect this, learn with it, and be a parent, right? Going NSA style spying isn't really going to help you. But this isn't a parenting podcast. So, from a technology point of view, they claim it's just an app that you can install. This comes from the Google Play Store. They've got a link for the iTunes version. It says it does not require iPhones to be jailbroken, doesn't require Android phones to be rooted at all. So this only has app-level permissions. How far can this app really go? How much spying can it actually do? And of course, they're going to ask for every permission under the sun for Android and iPhone. But at the end of the day, if your kid looks through the list of installed apps, I'm sure they could just remove this, right? They can't block uninstalling, or else every piece of Android malware would block you from uninstalling.
Well, it gets better. It uses volumetric data encryption, which I've never heard of. Apparently, it does exist, but it just sounds like somebody created their own encryption and is selling it.
It's never a good idea to roll your
military grade encryption.
Oh, military grade.
Military grade.
Well, so, now we know they're serious.
I mean, look, it's the whole idea. Look, I have a 3.5-year-old. I mean, I have no idea. I know what my teenage students do. My 3.5-year-old, things are going to change in 10 years when it becomes a teenager. But I mean, yes, you have to trust them. You want to know where they are. But I think a long discussion with them of trust, and we're going to trust you. We're going to do these things, but we need access to it. To say, hey, I need to, when I call you, I need you to pick up. I think that's a way better thing to do than then let's install this on your phone. And then when your child says, is this legal? The answer is yes, I pay your phone bill, therefore it's legal. I don't think that goes very far. And by the way, that's in their FAQ. If you ask them, it says, you are a parent, you are paying their phone bill, they live under your roof, you have the ability to do this as their guardian. And that always doesn't make me feel well.
So it looks like volumetric encryption is a way to encrypt Docker containers. It's some company selling this, so who knows whether or not it's good. I can't speak to it, although I have to say, if they're relying on a company to encrypt the data on Docker containers. So this is server-side encryption. This isn't phone-side encryption, right? Other apps this might save it to like the SD card, so you could just snoop through and other apps can snoop through and grab all the stuff. I don't know. There's always a possibility of that, though. There's been plenty of security applications that just make a folder called secure and put all the stuff in there in plain text without any sort of protection at all. So the fact that they are buying encryption instead of using one of the tens of fantastic, vetted, audited, open source security protocols, even for Android, especially for Android. The fact that they're buying something instead of just using open source stuff, it's concerning. It's very concerning. It's definitely a red flag.
And I mean, you go through this, and like you said, it's app level permissions. If they're sending this somewhere, and I told this parent this, if they're sending this somewhere, don't you think that people are going to go and find that endpoint and try and pull it off? Because think about it, you have a teenager's phone. Guess what their number one phone contact is? You, your parent. Guess what their number one driving direction is? Your house and school. You basically can steal their identity. And do you really want all this information on a encrypted Docker container in some cloud? I mean, it sounds like a really bad idea. And by the way, it doesn't work with Snapchat yet. And so I mean, think about that. The number one app that teenagers are using is Snapchat. It doesn't work with that. My teenage students are really, really enterprising. So if they found this out, they would say, what else can I do? If they can't uninstall it, they'll find a way around it. They'll start using Signal. I teach them about Signal in class. I teach them how to use Signal, how to use Tor in class. Guess what? That's where they're going to.
Yeah, if there's anything that any parent, or especially that security people, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a security person, and you probably know this. There is nothing that will break security faster and more effectively than a teenager with time and on a mission. Right? I'm speaking from experience. There is no one that will brute force hashes faster than a teenager who wants into something.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, like we said, beginning of the show, the Mirai botnet was to play King of the Hill with Minecraft. I mean, right there.
Yeah, this is. I would avoid these things. I understand the want. I understand the. Even some parents call it a need to spy on your kids, but you just don't need that. As far as tracking goes, would I enable Find My iPhone? Would I enroll them in the Android device manager and make sure that you can see where that device is? Yeah, absolutely, because that's a theft thing, right? That's you could go so far as to spy on their location with it, but why? Call, ask, talk. Communicate. It's not that hard, but that's for parenting in 30.
Will I be able to see images or videos sent via text? No.
Right.
So you can only see text from text, because video, because they know what's going to happen with video and pictures, they don't want to be in the filtering type of business. So you can only see text. Okay.
That's a great point. If they take pictures of illicitly sent material, they could be liable for a host of really horrible child protection laws that would run that company and those people into the ground faster than anything. So yeah, building this type of app is not only dangerous to your relationship with your child, it's dangerous to the company who writes it.
So again, it's one of those, I come across this, and this is not the only one of these things. There are a whole bunch of them.
There's tons.
So we just picked this one out, just like last week when we talked about public data. We singled one company out, but there's a million of them. Disney is peddling some sort of IoT thing that lets you do parental controls via a web server. Again, I mean, this is not that hard to do. It's not that hard to bypass. Oh, and by the way, when you see a website, and Tom did it faster than I can type it in. You just wp-login.php, and you better have a strong password, because the username is admin.
You can change that. If you run a WordPress site, you can change it from admin to literally anything else, and you probably should. So I'm not ragging on WordPress. I love WordPress, but there's a reason it gets hacked the most. It's because it powers half the web.
And by the way, again, if this is their quote unquote security, remember, the number one person the child messages is probably you, the parent. All your information is now there too. Oh, and by the way, if I knew that this was on there, I will just in clear text send social security numbers and addresses, and my credit card number is, like, even if it doesn't make sense, but you know what? That would be awesome.
That would be great.
So, I mean, we see that. I think trust goes a long way. Okay, with 7 minutes left, I want to ask Tom about not his Bitcoin issue, but the idea of, with all these wallet apps, Venmo and Google Wallet and Square, they always ask for social security numbers and driver's licenses and proof of whatever. And we always tell people, don't send this for a whole bunch of different reasons. But if they really need this, is there another way to do it without all this information? And what should we do?
So for buying Bitcoin specifically, you can use a local service. Local Bitcoins is a great one. I've used Wall of Coins in the past. I'd like them too. Basically, they're a front end that let you search for people with cash deposit open. So someone will go to Local Bitcoins or Wall of Coins and say, hey, I've got 100 Bitcoins, or that's a whole lot of money. I've got a Bitcoin to sell. And they send it to Wall of Coins, who holds it, or they send it to Local Bitcoins, who holds it. And they say, okay, Here's my information to make a public cash deposit at a bank. You walk into a bank, you get out your wallet, you slap $50 on the table and fill out a deposit slip and say it goes to John Smith. Here's their account number, and here's the $50. Go for it. And then you send a text to the service or to the seller, depending on what you're doing, and say, hey, it's done. You've got the money now, and you keep your receipt. So sometimes some services make you send a picture of the receipt, but in the end, the seller logs onto their online banking, and they go, oh yeah, $50 cash deposit. It's right there in my account. Cool. Local Bitcoins or wallet coins, whoever you're using, you are free to release $50 worth of Bitcoins. And that service gives you the coins. So no, you don't have to provide all that information. Currently, there are ways around it, although it's getting harder every day. And the reason for that, at least in the United States, is the really, really onerous anti-money laundering laws and tracking laws around cash, buying stuff, digital property, holding money, source of wealth. There's a bunch of legal stuff that goes into this, but it all comes down to the US government does not want people using Bitcoin as a way to launder money. I mean, cash is easy enough to launder if you wanted to launder money, but that's beside the point. So yeah, if you want to use any online exchanges, if you want to buy Bitcoin from your bank account, credit card, debit card, in most sites, you're going to need to provide all of this information. And once you pay into it, they might ask you for more. That just happened to me recently. So we'll see.
I mean, I do the normal thing and I look, is it secure? Am I sending it encrypted? Do I trust the site? Like Google, I mean, they already have my information. My only concern is when Google asks you to take a photo of your driver's license. It used to be take a photo and send it, which means it got uploaded to Google Photos and you had to remember to delete it. But now it's take a picture using our embedded, not web app, I guess. I mean, but that's a little scarier. But I trust Google to not do anything necessarily bad with it. But I recently did it with Coinbase, and Coinbase I trust, but it's a Bitcoin exchange.
Yeah, it's a little harrowing to have to give all of your information, especially with Bitcoin companies, because Coinbase is established, but this company I'm going through now is not, right? They're a relatively new player in the market, and some people have had experiences with them, and they say they love them. So I figured I'll try it out. But now they've got literally everything they need to recreate my identity, which isn't a good feeling. Of course, there's repercussions if they do leak that stuff, as minor as they may be, but it still doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. Also, if a company, especially a Bitcoin startup, asks for personal information, and they ask you to send them all of this personal information in an email, a plain text, non-encrypted email, tell them no, and complain loudly. I have done that. I was asked today, and no, I will not be sending personal information over email. That's just not what we do. But I'll let you know how that all shakes out if it shakes out.
So anyway, that's it. I mean, we're a little short, but we didn't have too much hard-hitting news other than Mirai, and you can read the article and make your own decisions. And it is a little inside baseball on how it all works, but I guess when we don't have news, that's a good thing. When we don't have big news, it's always a good thing. So,
yep.
With that said, we will see everyone next week.
Bye, see everyone.